Three, two, one. Good afternoon, Frank.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frank Forza. This is my friend Noah Green. We're Everyman BJJ, and we talk a lot about mindset. We talk a lot about growth, personal development, and of course, the martial arts, life on and off the mat. My experience has been as a journalist for many years, and then working for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I have black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I compete a lot. Noah is a blue belt under Gracie. He's worked a lot in executive accounting, and he is very well read on a wide array of subjects. He's getting ready to go and do some postgraduate work, get a master's in something or another. So we're missing our man Jordan Worth, who's a brown belt with 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu. He's usually drops in whenever he's available. He teaches a lot. So Noah, welcome to the show here on a Friday afternoon. We were talking yesterday about a lot of things. One of those was career transition. You're transitioning to careers for more work-life balance. I talked about transitioning from journalism and writing, even though I do that a lot. I still do that. But there has been some burnout. There's been the need for some shift. So we were talking about that. I guess you told me you had more questions.
Yeah. We yesterday, unfortunately, I think due to technology, we had to cut short our conversation. But it was also I think we're up to 75 minutes into that episode. So better or worse, it was a good breaking point for us. I think that right now I'm really missing the routine of being on the mats, but I'm having to dig in a little bit deeper with other areas. Continuation of yesterday's conversation. So if I think this is going to be episode 27, but if folks were to go back and listen to episode 26 as a primer for continuation on that conversation. Now, to get us back into our mindset of what we were talking about yesterday, I think part of that burnout that you feel in your career is there's a disconnect between how you want to live your life and what is your basic ideal situation and how you're currently living it, and some of the shortcomings from being idealistic and realistic, be more pragmatic about things. So for me personally, I'm going through a career transition, get more into tech, get more into data science. I just think, it's got more flexibility, less face time requirement, so I can move my schedule around and make training and live in harmony with the jiu-jitsu lifestyle. This is a life journey. I've not made much progress on the mats as a black belt or as a blue belt towards the advanced belts, but I've spent a lot of time working and surviving, just living without actually being on the mats. So a lot of reading, I do other things outside of jits that kind of support that experience. A lot of reading. I learned Portuguese, so like right now, I took a step back about a year ago and said I need to make some changes so that I get out of this rut. I really felt like I was in a rut. When you've got 20 plus years of experience in a career field, the seats at the top of the pyramid are few and far between. And I was looking at those seats and thoroughly canvassing the market for those opportunities, and I wasn't getting the market response I wanted. And also, it's kind of like, be wary of what, as you're climbing the corporate ladder, be wary of what your the wall that your ladder is leaning on. And I just got to a point where I realized that the extreme pressure on financial executives can take a great toll on your physical and mental well-being. And I was comparing that with some of my colleagues that I've met or friends that I met at Henzo's in that blue basement, and seeing where they're at, similar age, similar lifestyle, life circumstance. And, they kind of lured me over into getting more in the tech side of things. So, I liked the flexibility schedule, flexibility of hours, the market reception of certain skill sets. And so that informed my decision to start making a transition. So it's probably going to take a couple of years, probably another 2 full years from where we're at today, especially with the pandemic. It's not really, that's adding a little bit more time, an additional 6 months. But it's a good route, I think. I'm pretty much an entrepreneur, but I'm willing to, burn the candle at both ends sometimes to get what I want. And in this regard, having more flexibility over my schedule will set me up to design or to implement the lifestyle design that I want. Doing this podcast is part of that. It's part of that jiu-jitsu lifestyle where mentally I'm within the space all the time almost, it seems now. Thinking about jiu-jitsu, thinking about my health, talking to you, making, deepening our friendship, and Jordan, and letting go of a lot of the long held beliefs that I've had, being more flexible and open-minded, so that becoming less rigid on the inside, to discover more possibilities of where life can lead. There are times where we talked about regret last Sunday, and there's regret that I feel about not achieving and being in a spot that I want to be. But then this is a journey, and now even the journey up through the belt system and my experience. Yesterday I said something that really I reflected on a little bit more, and that's the circumstances, the factors when you walk into as a white belt, your first class as a white belt. Although your knowledge is much lower, you still face the same kinds of friction, the elements of friction in your life. They're still there, and it takes a long time for you to work out those obstacles. If you really dedicate your self to achieving a black belt, you're going to have to move a lot of things around inside of yourself to achieve that goal. And I'm willing to change my career. I'm willing to go through some personal hardships, and that add to the value of what that career goal or what that personal goal is. Now before I put my career in front of my personal and my mental health, I put my career in front of that. I'm that person when I was a white belt, when I first stepped on the mat. That person who was making those choices has changed, and I've really am moving a lot of things out of the way within myself to keep advancing. So those frictions, those things that are in the way, you have to deal with them consciously. You got to write them out on paper. What are the things that are preventing me from my personal goal? And when you set that goal, you really need to put your everything to that goal. I was listening to Custody Amato earlier today. Oh no!
Oh, sorry.
At least you didn't fall. I know I've got a long soliloquy, a long monologue here.
Yeah, we're good. Keep going. No.
Okay. Fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my phone here.
All right. So I was listening to Custody Amato, and then something I've been doing is that when I see famous people, or I see someone in the news that have passed on, I've been going on to findagrave.com and looking at their headstone. And I invite those who are listening to this podcast to go and read what's on Custody Amato's headstone and what he's got written there, the quote that he has. If I may, I'm going to pull it up here in a second. I'm going to read it and share it with you.
Mm-hmm.
A boy comes to me with a spark of interest. I feed the spark and it becomes a flame. I feed the flame and it becomes a fire. I feed the fire and it becomes a roaring blaze. He did that with Mike Tyson, and many other fighters. So,
well, this is what's interesting about a lot of interesting things about Gus D'Amato. First of all, nobody would know who Gus D'Amato is if he never hooked up with Mike Tyson, right? He painted his masterpiece. He was a damn good boxing trainer that had a particular expertise. I'm not saying he couldn't adapt. I can't speak that. I'm not saying he couldn't adapt to his fighter and change the style. But his particular expertise was that peekaboo style, which was perfect for Mike Tyson. What's interesting is this is a Jedi the world would not have known. You would not have just cited him. Nobody would know who he is if he didn't hook up with Mike Tyson. And guess what? It doesn't lessen his fight IQ or his acumen or how great of a coach he was, right? There's a lot of people like that who, for whatever reason, they're a Van Gogh, they're a Fitzgerald. In their lifetime, they don't get their due. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of, first thing I want people to know out there, there's a bunch of Gus D'Amatos out there. And they're not just Gus D'Amatos because, they wasted their talent. Some of them made great use of their talent. It's just that the stage, the lights didn't shine on them for some reason, right? Somebody didn't walk in the door that just was the perfect, this was the perfect, imagine, lightning struck and the perfect guy to paint his masterpiece, to take all of his life's work, the perfect guy got introduced to him one day, right? Because Tyson was in and out of those juvie halls, and then I guess some jail, some jail mentor or whatever, or some guard noticed him and noticed his talent, and somehow that leads to, hey, Gus, we got a kid here, right? Well, what's interesting is what are the odds of that happening? It reminds me of Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon and Garfunkel there in New York, right? If you listen, no disrespect to Paul Simon, who's a very talented songwriter and has made good music, but Paul Simon's voice to me is okay. It's an okay voice. When you put it with Garfunkel, Art Garfunkel, I believe it is, Art Garfunkel, together in their prime, the harmony, it's hard. There's very few people on planet Earth that can harmonize that well with each other. You have, the Bee Gees, who were brothers, right? So they were genetically wired, and from a young age, they had a chance to perfect that harmony, right? That's an advantage. But then you had Simon and Garfunkel, who weren't related, who didn't, who just happened to meet each other in the same neighborhood. That is lightning striking, brother. If those two guys just don't meet for whatever reason, a lot of those sounds, they're just incredible harmony. You just don't get them. And so think about the odds that those two collide. And right before Gus died, I think Gus D'Amato only had him a couple years. So it was almost like Mike Tyson kept Cus D'Amato, probably added a couple years to his life. Probably added, because a lot of people, you'll be amazed if you follow your old friends, you'll be amazed at how many of them will stay alive for something. I've seen that so many times in my life where if they have a reason to stay alive, they do, to watch someone graduate. I've seen that many times. I'm not saying that's the norm, but I've seen that. When I was working with Dana White, had, he had moved into a house. I think it used to be Franco Lorenzo Fertitta's house, and they went and moved into another house. He bought their house. So he moved in there with his family, and Dana went and got like this, they had a normal underground pool, which I guess the Fertittas had, and Dana wanted a different pool. So he kind of had something like, I don't know, some Cabo. It was like this special rock and this special design, and he wanted to, snazz it up, make it a little more beach-esque. And so he did it. But apparently Dana, imagine this, Dana, my friend, didn't do it with the blessing of the homeowners associations, the HOAs out there. And if you know anything about the homeowners associations in Nevada, I don't know what they're like anywhere else, but in Nevada, man, they are, they're strict about your AstroTurf, your grass, your this, your that. You didn't cut your lawn for 10 days. They are super strict, even to someone like Dana White. So Dana White's got in a multi-million-dollar house. He's got a neighbor who's in a multi-million-dollar house. So he had a pretty old neighbor. And I remember Dana and we were going to like meetings to try to settle this. We were going to like homeowners association. I went to one of the meetings with his lawyer and we went and did that. And I joked with him one day because his neighbor would like peek out one of his windows and see, he was saying, hey, this is an eyesore. This pool is an eyesore, yada, yada, yada. And so Dana, I think my recollection is the homeowners association had ruled against Dana and they were fining him like every day. And Dana was just letting the fines rack up, being Dana being a stubborn guy, standing up for what he believes in. He didn't think that they were in the right. So it's going on and on. And I said, you know what, Dana, the crazy thing is you're probably going to keep this guy alive a lot longer. He's like, yeah, he liked it. I said, this guy's an older guy. And this fight is probably going to he's going to stay alive years longer just for this ongoing battle with you. And we got a good laugh out of that. So it can work many ways where I do believe you talk about your why. I saw that with my brother, Joey. We had a woman that raised us in Baltimore, Kathleen and Thomas Boone, who were an African-American family. They raised me and my brother, Tony, for part of our childhood. They raised my brother, Joey, for his entire childhood. And I personally saw Aunt Kat, we called her Aunt Kat, stay alive years longer. She was 84, 85 when she died, just to see Joey, make it to a certain point. I know it sounds crazy and it sounds mystical and whatever. I personally have seen that. I believe in that. Cus D'Amato, I'm going to guess, and I would love to meet Mike Tyson one day and say, I'll bet you probably added a couple of years to Cus D'Amato's life, just being so thrilled to work with a Mike Tyson. And it's interesting too, where, especially in today's day and age, where the color thing and, Black Lives Matter and a lot of racial tensions, and we're revisiting the ugliness of some of our U.S. history here with slavery and other things. And we're forced to confront these things. And what gets lost in that is how much love there has been. Yes, we have a lot of ugliness to our history, and we're facing that now. We have to face the music, and we have to fix broken systems. However, let us never lose sight of how many people of color have come together, have loved each other, have stuck up for each other, and that being a classical case. This guy in upstate New York, Italian guy, what could he have in common with a young punk who's in and out of detention centers, who's fighting adults when he's 13, knocking adults out from the age 13 on, weighing 190 pounds. Mike Tyson already punched like a man at 13 years old. He weighed 190 pounds, had manpower, more than manpower in his punches, was just, was like he said, I was a violent guy. I was an angry guy, right? And he had lost the genetic jackpot, right? He was unwantable. And Cus D'Amato, coming across, an Italian guy from upstate New York, who's worked with many elite fighters, many disciplined fighters, seeing something in Mike Tyson and saying, hey, you know what? I'll work with you. I'll take a chance on you. And then letting him live in his house, trusting him, and then saying, I love you like you're my son. I love you like you're my son. I want to teach you everything I know. I want to teach you everything I know. I believe in you. I see something special in you. You think Mike Tyson had hardly anybody else in his life who ever saw something special in him? People saw Mike Tyson, they thought he's a young thug, he's a punk, he'll be dead by the time he's 20 or spend the rest of his life in prison. Cus D'Amato had those eyes of a mentor, of somebody who, again, not just somebody who saw dollar signs. Cus D'Amato didn't get rich off Mike Tyson. And I think that's why Mike Tyson loved him for. Gus D'Amato did not get rich off of Mike Tyson, but he saw something in Tyson he loved. That was a chance to paint the masterpiece. And I think he related. Gus had seen the violent side of sports too. Fighting is a violent sport. It's discipline. It's a lot of other things. It's a violent sport. And I think Gus D'Amato wasn't scared of Mike Tyson too. He wasn't scared. He could see, hey, like you just said, there's a fire there. Can we channel it? I'm Gus D'Amato. I know I can channel it. I've channeled it before, and I can channel it again. And I care about you. I love you. And I always say this, the first rule of coaching out there for everybody, the first rule of coaching is the athlete has to know you care about him. It's not about what you know. It's not about your IQ. That was Mike Tyson with Gus D'Amato, and that's why he still speaks reverently of Gus D'Amato. So in terms of what else were you talking about there? No, I didn't even address the original thing that you were talking about. What was the original thread?
Well, before we go further, I just want to make a correction on your pronunciation there. I think his name was Constantine, which C-U-S, Cuss is what they, instead of Gus.
That's how I'm Gus D'Amato. I know it's Gus D'Amato. I know his name. I've said it many times. Maybe you misheard. Maybe I misspoke with it. I know that it's Gus D'Amato.
All right. It's just my hearing.
My C may be coming out as a G. I know that it's Gus D'Amato. C-U-S apostrophe. I mean, C-U-S-D apostrophe A-M-A-T-O. Yes. Good.
Yeah, and I'm hearing it as Gus, but this also could be, these things right here. So I wanted to make that clarification in case other people hear it as well. That I know you're saying Cuss. It just sounds like Gus, but because of the mic.
I'm very.
Oh, I know you are. No,
and I'm very familiar with the night that Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson in Japan, and exactly one of those moments where you know exactly where you were at that time. I remember, it was such a one-sided fight. 39-40-1 favorite was Mike Tyson. That's a huge favorite of fighting. And it was so. It was just so much of a mismatch that I didn't even really bother watching. It was on downstairs in my aunt and uncle's house, and I was upstairs. I stayed in the attic, and I just remember like coming down here and there and watching it, and then being like, and then hearing my uncle downstairs and being like, "Oh my God, this fight's still on," And then I think from like this underdog guy is standing up to Mike Tyson, like let's watch it. So from round 6 on or whatever, I'm watching it, and a lot of twists and turns in that fight, and I remember just sitting on the stairs there at the attic. I didn't even sit on the couch. I just was kind of there. And I remember Mike Tyson getting knocked down and reaching for that mouthpiece, almost like a guy in the dark, who can't tell his way around, and he's feeling for that mouthpiece. But again, if Gus D'Amato is around, and I think Mike Tyson probably has said this, would say this, I think that Tyson would probably have been, because remember, people underestimate how much that devastated Mike Tyson. I mean, imagine you've lost the genetic lottery. Nobody cares about you. You're bounced around. You're in and out of detention centers. You don't think much of yourself. You got all this violence, all this anger. Somebody sees you. Somebody believes in you. Somebody loves you. Somebody's feeding and investing in you like no one ever has. You get a couple years with them. They give you all the skills to be great at your craft, and then they die. That's devastating. That's devastating for Mike Tyson. Like, hey, you feel like, that's the kind of thing where you have conversation with God. Like, God, why do you take away the only really great thing I have, the only person to ever love me, and you take that away from me? So you can understand Mike Tyson had other demons, but that was a significant domino to fall, because he finally had a father. He had a father who cared about him, and the father did as much as he could in those years, whatever they were, 5 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it was. He did what he could. But Mike could have still used some more fathering and mentoring along the way. And after that, guess what? Not only was Mike like, hey, I lost the only guy that loved me, my father figure, but in addition, he didn't have anybody he trusted. And you're in boxing and you're making that kind of money and you're going through all the things and you don't have anybody you trust. Converse that with, say, a Floyd Mayweather who didn't have an easy life. But Floyd Mayweather is surrounded by Al Heyman, his money guy, and Leonard Ellerbe. Well, they're a dream team. They trust each other. They care about each other. Floyd's almost made $1 billion. He's got a group around him. He's loyal to them. They're loyal to him. They trust each other. Mike Tyson did not have that. Mike Tyson did not choose his childhood either, by the way. I'm not making excuses for everything he ever said or did. I mean, he had some really ugly moments in front of cameras. But if you look at his life and you put his life under a microscope, he was dealt a horrible hand, and he didn't choose that hand, but he had to play that hand. So God bless Tyson for at least the progress he's made now and where he's coming. Looked like he's going to fight. But anyway, we kind of got sidetracked with the
Frank, that's actually a wonderful example from the fight sports of what I'm talking about. And what I'm talking about is, yesterday you said, you're concerned at some point that the value of the black belt becomes cheapened. However, I'm going to say this: the BJJ community and the experience of going through your life on that journey, on the mats and off the mats, it's going to help you or help one along the way. And once you realize that, you start to identify, like, hey, we're all a little damaged in our lives. We're all a little hurt. And that love, like with what Cus D'Amato had for Mike Tyson, that relationship that they had, that came from the fighting sports. Because it's not your typical sport. It's not, you're not throwing a ball. You're not trying to put a ball through a hoop. There's something deeper to that, and it heals parts of you. It heals parts of you in ways that other sports just don't do that. And you can do it through your lifespan. You can do this through your lifespan and have a healthy circle of friends with it. So where I'm getting to with this is connecting the dots from your why to how it gives back to you so much more than what you have to put in, but even it amplifies what you put in. So you have to pay the price. And for me, I'm telling you, I'm designing my life to pay that price even more by
there's
job
always going
transition.
to be a hierarchy in terms of what people have achieved in tournaments, and usually, just like in higher education, there are people who put a lot of stock in what college you went to. There's certainly some colleges are more prestigious. It doesn't make you smarter than somebody who went to Harvard may not be any smarter or better at something than somebody who went to, say, my alma mater, the University of Maryland. That's not necessarily the case, but certainly the perception of and the pedigree of that and the prestige of that, right? It carries a lot of cachet, and jiu-jitsu is probably going to be like that too. It's going to be like, people always ask me, well, you got a black belt. They don't know me. Well, who gave you your black belt, right? They put a lot of stock in, well, who gave it to you, right? Like, and let me see are you a legit black belt, or are you, and when they say who gave it to you, that's what they're trying to gauge. Now, I'm not saying that means they're always going to judge accurately. Getting back to Mike Tyson, this was another thing, and this relates to jiu-jitsu and the fight sports too. His style that he was dominant with was the peekaboo style. Now, prior to that, we didn't even talk about that. Those of us who followed boxing, we didn't talk about a peekaboo style, really. I mean, Joe Frazier had some kind of style in a way. Joe Frazier had his own style, but it was like the closest thing we'd seen to peekaboo, even though Joe Frazier got down so low that, he ducked so low and then came up. That was Joe Frazier's thing. He would duck so low and then come up with those vicious left hooks. But the peekaboo style a little bit different with darting in and out and the uppercuts and Mike, so that was bold. That was actually a bold move, because if you just looked at Tyson, 5'10", 220 pounds, if you didn't know him, before there was buzz, right? Before there was buzz about this kid, you wouldn't have looked at him. You say, wow, he's a hard hitter, but you wouldn't have looked at him and probably thought he'll be the future heavyweight champion. Why? Because the future heavyweight champion usually was 6'2", 6'3", 220, like Ali. He was tall, he was long. Even now, even since Tyson, there hasn't been another short then I think Holyfield was 6'1". There, you know, you got a bunch of other guys, George Foreman, you know, Lennox Lewis, you know, and some others, you know, even Tyson Fury, 6'7", you know, Deontay Wilder, 6'4", 6'5". These are tall giants. And then you got little Mike Tyson at 5'10". It's not supposed to happen, but that peekaboo allowed him to dart underneath those jabs, underneath that length, and he'd get on the inside. And so really daring, a visionary in a sense, to see that, like, because Mike Tyson could have been like, well, you know, you're not working with anybody big right now, right? You're not working with anybody big now. So it's kind of a reminder, even though Gus D'Amato was known in New York and he was a really good trainer and he'd handle some good professionals, he wasn't, say, Emmanuel Stewart. He wasn't the who's who, creme de la creme. He was a guy who people in the know knew he is a really good coach, but he wasn't a household name. So even for Mike Tyson, a lot of people would have thought, Noah, why do I want to work with you? You're not working with anybody big now. You're not working with any world champion. You're not a big name. You're not in all the magazines. You're not huge. You're not on TV all the time. Why would I work with you? Why? It's a really fascinating story because Gus D'Amato, I'm saying that it's Gus D'Amato, was just the perfect coach for him, and yet wasn't a household name, wasn't the greatest name in boxing, but he was the right coach at the right time with the right demeanor, with the right psychology, with the right heart. And it's amazing how many factors, you know, you and I talk about how many factors have to come together, how many dominoes have to fall to produce a world champion in a world where so many things can happen. There are, you know, Mike Tyson had to keep showing up for practice. A lot of times, even this, give Mike Tyson credit. A lot of kids in Mike Tyson's shoes, they just wouldn't keep coming to practice. They're so hard-headed. They're so uncoachable, right? Mike Tyson had to be like, I'll keep coming to practice. There's nothing that Gus D'Amato could do to force him. Like, I mean, yeah, once he lived there. But before that, there was nothing. Why did Mike Tyson keep coming to practice when a lot of people don't? He's supposed to be this unruly street kid, right? He's supposed to be just this savage punk. Why did he keep coming to practice? Do punks keep coming to practice? There was something in Mike Tyson that was coachable for a while in the right environment. And it's just amazing to see how many dominoes had to fall for us to sit here and be talking about that. And for Mike Tyson really to capture he transcended boxing in the sense, just like Ali did, in the sense that people who didn't care about boxing were aware of him and were like, oh, please let me never share a jail cell or be in a dark alley with that guy. Like, he was the face of, like, you know, the baddest man, like as Dana White says, baddest man on the planet, right? Mike Tyson was that guy for a couple years. Could have been there a lot longer if if Gus D'Amato had stayed alive a lot longer, whatever, who knows? But amazing. This is another lesson from that. You look at the Beatles. I think the Beatles run, you know, we talk about the Beatles now. The Beatles run was only 6 years, right? Boom, they were a meteor, bloop, and then they just had a library that just kept going. And kind of like Mike Tyson was a meteor. I mean, he was there, and for 4 or 5 years, wow. I mean, and he got a lot of cachet. He was able to milk his reputation even later, even when he wasn't nearly as good as Lennox Lewis or even Holyfield. We still thought we couldn't let go of the idea of who he once was. We couldn't. That always lived in our imagination. So even when the ship had sailed and Mike Tyson was a fraction of his former self and he wasn't the same, we couldn't undo our previous perception of him. He was just so incredible, so much of a tornado, the likes of which we'd never seen. We couldn't get it out of our mind. So, you know, I knew that Evander Holyfield was going to be a problem for him because Holyfield, this is a lesson for a lot of people out there, Holyfield is very courageous and he's not scared of anyone. And a lot of what Tyson's success very early on had been the intimidation factor. Guys melted, guys, you know, felt a little bit of power and a whiff and they just looked for an excuse to go down. I knew Evander Holyfield would not be that guy. Very smart fighter. And I thought that maybe he even had the heart to make Tyson question himself, which is exactly what happened. He had his courage alone wind up intimidating Mike Tyson. Similar thing happened when Ronda Rousey fought Holly Holm when they fought in Australia before Holly shocked the world and head kicked Ronda and TKO'd her. Ronda wanted so badly during the weigh-ins and the lead up to the fight to see fear in Holly Holm. She just craved it. She needed to see it. I think she had seen it in every other opponent. She didn't see it in Holly Holm. And that, if you watch, you and I were talking about body language and everything earlier, off camera. But I think I'm very confident, having studied the fight game for a long time, that Holly Holm's confidence affected Ronda Rousey. And as the fight went on, that seed of doubt in Ronda, that seed of I can't scare her, the more that every time Holly hit her, every time she couldn't take Holly down or keep Holly down, I think those seeds of doubt grew. And then you saw some desperation. You saw Ronda get a little wild, a little reckless. So, we always talk about the head game, what I call the mind jitsu. We talk about that a lot on here. That's a big, big deal. And no disrespect to Mike Tyson, who I like and have a lot of respect for, but when it comes to the mental game, him versus Holyfield, it's Holyfield all day. Holyfield is about as mentally strong as it gets for a fighter. You're not like, he's one of those guys, kind of like a Diaz brother. There are certain fighters that before a fight, if you try to intimidate them and you talk stuff, you're just wasting your time. There's no intimidation value. You try to intimidate a Diaz or Evander Holyfield or even Antonio Nogueira or whatever. You remember Nogueira, the UFC heavyweight and from Pride days, or even Fedor Emelianenko. You're wasting your time. Randy Couture, you may beat them, you may knock them out, you may send them to the hospital, intimidate them, scare them. It's not going to happen. Dominic Cruz, it's not going to. Michael Chandler.
We're talking about the athletes.
Bernard Hopkins, not going to happen.
We're talking about the athletes, but that mental, having that mental strength, or even the strategy, but let me go back to what I was saying earlier about friction to achieving your goals as a black belt. That is, I think you got to go back to your relationship with your coach. And you said rule number one, the athlete has to feel like the coach has the athlete's interest first.
That you have to feel like they care about you as an athlete.
They care
as a person.
Okay.
I'm sorry, as a person.
And
to get the most out of someone, to get the most trust, to get the most out of them, a couple of things have to happen. Number one, you have to know that I care about you. Number two, you have to know that everything I'm asking you to do, I've done. If you mop the floors, I've mopped them. If you run sprints, I've run more. If you get tapped and it sucks, I've been tapped more. That's credibility. And a lot of times you're talking about body language and psychology and voice and everything else. A lot of times you can tell that just by your instructor's demeanor. You can just look in their eyes sometimes and tell, like, oh man, he or she has done everything they're asked me to do. He or she means it. They mean these words. Or you can tell when they don't care about you. A lot of people can actually tell when they don't care about you, when you're just a whatever, you're just a cog in their wheel, or you're just a number. You're just a monthly due to keep the lights on or whatever, to buy their house or whatever. Right? I'm sorry I interrupted you, Noah.
No. Well, you're helping filling out the thought process that I'm following here, and that's, if you're in a situation at a jiu-jitsu academy, man, just think of how many people have walked out of that academy's door and never returned just because of that rule number one. My experience at Henzo's, the world's largest academy, I am just one, and I'm just one, but every Gracie there knows me by name. Mm-hmm. And all the other coaches, they know me by, unless they're like not common, or other than like maybe John Danaher doesn't make, because I don't train in his class that much, therefore he doesn't know me that well. But if you just think about the average person, I'm talking about myself here. What benefit do I get from, going above and beyond, outside of just the technical training? Igor comes in, or Neiman comes in and they teach a technique. Though, Neiman's focused on, he's a fighter for Bellator. So he's focused on his fight career right now, and rightfully so. But he cares. I know he cares. But this other stuff that we're talking about, the technique is tip of the iceberg. You can teach that in class. What about all the other stuff below the surface? The mind jiu-jitsu,
Mind
not everyone.
Jitsu, not mind jitsu.
Sorry.
You're correcting me on customado.
Well, I wasn't correct. I just want to make sure that I was hearing you correctly. That's all.
I know.
Because of this, because your mic sometimes sounds, it cuts off whenever you're not speaking.
Let me say this. So this is interesting about. I want to address. It is a two-way street, right? When we think of the turnover of the students, we could sit here and just say, well, there's a lot of weak students, and students are lazy and they're apathetic and whatever. They just don't want to put the work in. But we as jiu-jitsu instructors have to think of how we can create an environment. Like maybe we're losing some people that actually do have the work ethic, but we just need to work with them a little bit. We need to create a better environment. And maybe we need, and I think a lot of instructors out there are doing that, where they're saying, okay, how can we create almost like maybe a tier system where we bring in people and we don't just throw everybody to the wolves. Because when I was coming in, of course, they just threw the wolves, right? They was just like, either, swim or, you drown, or don't come back if you don't want, whatever, there wasn't retention wasn't a thing. Now, I think instructors have to think about retention, partly for the economics of it, but also partly because, we have to remember there's always a way for us to improve as instructors. And part of improving is not just, as you were saying, teaching techniques. It's people, it's our emotional IQ. It's the presentation of jiu-jitsu. It's maybe how much do we throw people to the wolves or not throw them to the wolves early on, because we realize that we need to build them up first and prepare them maybe with something lighter, right? And so it is a two-way street, and there's a lot that we as instructors can do and are doing to say, hey, let's make it more whatever family friendly. Let's not make it as much of a Shark Tank all the time, or like what they do at Henzo's. There's certain professional classes you'd have to graduate your way or be invited into those classes, but those are not the general curriculum classes, right? So that's number one. Number two, going back to me as a white belt, because I was thinking of my why, and I know how much you really look forward to the day when you get your black belt and how much that's going to mean to you, how much it meant to me. But when I was a white belt, Noah, to my recollection, I wasn't obsessed as a white belt, and I think I was a white belt for 6 or 9 months. And I was not obsessed with like, oh, I'm going to get my black belt. I want to be a black belt. It wasn't. It was different. Number one, I've said, I went there. I just like competing, right? So I just thought I was kind of like the guy, like, these guys are supposed to be so good. I see them on UFC, this style on UFC. I have a wrestling background. Let me test myself. And then when I was testing myself at Pedro Sauer's in Utah, in Sandy, Utah, and I was losing quite a bit. And I was very competitive. I was giving guys a tough role, but I was losing, and I was being tapped. But I was giving some of these guys heck. It was like I was a handful. I was that guy who came at you full bore. I did not want to lose. I was using all my power, all my speed, all my explosion, all my grit, and I was not there to learn the technical side. It was probably a good couple of years before I really surrendered and realized that you're hurting your technique. You gotta be technique first, right? Not just win first, and not just use all your athleticism, not just use your wrestling. But in any event, for me, it was just being ultra competitive. Like, I want to stay. It's like, they say success is the best revenge. It's like, dude, I want to avenge. I like you guys, but I don't want the last time we rolled as you won. I want to stay. I want to start beating you. So that was one. The other thing was my collegiate wrestling career at the University of Maryland. I had been recruited there. I was going to be on the wrestling team. I had done some practices. And I have that 27-inch scar on my right leg. I almost lost my right leg. I had blood clots there. I had a blocked artery. My leg was shrinking. It was atrophying. And that was horrible. And so my wrestling career, that was devastating to my identity. That was devastating to me on so many levels. I didn't even know why I was in college other than to wrestle at the time, right? So that had always stayed with me. Randy Couture said that when I had interviewed him. He said, why did you go, Randy? Randy was 33 when he went and started fighting the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I said, Randy, why did you do it? That's relatively late, especially back then in the 1990s, right? Why would anybody at 33 go and, college educated guy and elite wrestler? There wasn't a lot of money in MMA. And he said, Frank, I always wanted to be a world champion or an Olympic champion in Greco-Roman wrestling. He wanted to be a national champion in college. Guess what? He was a runner-up. He was a national runner-up. Now, a lot of people don't realize how much that eat at you. A lot of people say, well, national runner-up, well, that feels good. No, that haunts someone like Randy Couture. Randy Couture wanted to be, on the U.S. Olympic team. Never was on, never got to compete in the Olympics. That haunted him. Never got to win a world title at Greco-Roman. That haunted him. He wanted more cracks. He still had the fire because he hadn't done all he wanted to do. It didn't go the way he wanted it to. That was a big part of my why, my personal why as a white belt was my love with wrestling, my love with the combat sports, my love with that kind of competition had been cut short. This was a chance, even though I was 30, 31 years old by now. I was just starting at 30, 31 years old. My leg still wasn't right. But I was just saying, Lord, you gave me another chance. Let me see if I can, that was the beautiful thing, Noah. This bear is talking about. The beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu, we talk about how you can adapt it to any body style. You can do the same with wrestling, but I think jiu-jitsu especially so. You can have one leg, no legs, you could have whatever condition. You could be super short, super long. It's like soccer. You can find a place on that mat and make a style work for you. It's, whatever your defects, you can find a style, right? As I used to tell Matt Serra, build your game around your frame. He loved that. Matt Serra, Henzo Blackman, build your game around your frame. And I coined that a long time ago, right? Matt Serra loved that. But you can do that in this sport. So even with my leg, not my leg being far, 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 I still had a lot of problems with my leg. But jiu-jitsu was the kind of sport that let me work around it way more than wrestling. It was like, wait, you can adapt it and make do and actually keep doing this, unlike wrestling. You can, the jiu-jitsu, you can actually work around that injury, that leg not being right, not being 100%, not being whole. But jiu-jitsu has so much to it and so many different layers. I'm like, you can build a style around that. It's not just bigger, faster, stronger, even though that matters. It's not just that. So I was like, wow. So for me, jiu-jitsu was like a second life, man. It was a second life. And also wrestling, when you're 30, 31, if you're not on the U.S. wrestling team or, or a collegiate wrestler, or whatever, there's no really for you to train. With jiu-jitsu, there were schools. It was like, yeah, these are open to go train. Wrestling, it wasn't easy to go find a wrestling mat. And, maybe during the season,
okay.
You'd have to go to a high school wrestling thing and wrestle with the high school kids or something, right?
And that's kind of awkward.
Yeah, it wasn't available. Whereas here was a jiu-jitsu school with 100 students and it was available. So it was like, wow, I got lucky. Like, it's available. There's a lot of people in there. I can adapt it and work around my injury. It's a second life, a second coming for me in my combat sports career. So for me, and I think a lot of people out there will relate to that. Maybe something got cut short for them. Maybe they wanted to train boxing and life happened and they didn't. Maybe they were a wrestler and something happened, life happened and they didn't. And you see people show up in MMA or show up in jiu-jitsu, and sometimes they have those kind of stories. It's not an uncommon story where they didn't get around to it for whatever reason, or they didn't stick with it. But now life is different, or it ate at them for so long that now they're like, okay, there's a gym 5 miles down the road. My best friend trains there or whatever. I'm going to do it. And that's the beauty. Those were really at the front of my mind. That was the fuel that was motivating me. It wasn't about belts, man. It was just about, competition, unfinished business with my unrequited love of grappling and combat sports, and a school, like not just a wrestling like high school gym or something, but like, wow. And then getting my butt kicked and being like, no, I'm not okay with this. Like, I'm not okay with you guys. I'm sorry. There was some ego there. I was like, I didn't say this, but I'm like, I'm just not okay with these guys kicking my butt. I'm not okay with that. And I'm going to keep coming until I start having my day. I still start tapping some of you guys. And that was really my particular journey. And I'm not saying that that's the highest ground or that that's noble, but sometimes again, you have to channel your dark side too. That's a big thing. Here's learning to channel your dark side. And that's what they say. The mats don't lie. The mats will show you who you are. They'll show you what you need to work on. And
Yes,
I'm not saying I'm certainly not. I've still got a lot of flaws, a lot of blemishes. And I say this about the fight sports, in jiu-jitsu in particular, or wrestling. It's not that none of us are saints, but it just makes you more whole. It makes you less broken than you would otherwise be. It makes you a nicer person than you would otherwise be. It doesn't make me the nicest person on planet Earth. It doesn't make me the most peaceful. It doesn't mean I never complain. It means I complain way less than I would. It means I'm way less of a jerk than I would be. I'm way less mean than I would be. So there is dramatic improvement. It doesn't mean that I'm just this shining example yet of a human. I'm not saying that. It doesn't mean that you will be as a black belt. It means you are a whole heck of, it will force you, getting the black belt will force you to become a whole lot better of a person, a whole lot stronger in those intangibles than would have been the case without the black belt. That's all it means. It's a big improvement versus the alternative versus not the black belt. I would say for a lot of people. You show me like a Mike Tyson. If they had gotten Mike Tyson in jiu-jitsu, if Customato had been a jiu-jitsu instructor and he had more time, whatever, he would have done wonders with Mike Tyson way sooner than would happen with Mike. Would have done wonders with him.
It wasn't just the technique, Frank. It wasn't just the technique. It wasn't just the technique, but a lot of the out of the ring discussions, that relationship he had with his coach. Now, the reason why I brought up my relationship with Neiman and Henzo and those coaches is they just don't have the time to work on the below the surface things. So that's why I think it's really important to accelerate that process with a coach, what you do. I'm saying with what you do, Frank.
Sometimes this is very important for people out there. Sometimes that jiu-jitsu mentor is not necessarily your head instructor. It might be ideal, but you have these academies where there's 500 people or whatever, 1,000 people. Sometimes that mentor could be a brown belt. It could be a purple belt. It could be, the person that's really looking out for you. The head instructor could be cool with you. They could like you, but sometimes those mentors could be a higher belt. It doesn't always have to be that head instructor, but somebody in there who motivates you, who cares about you, who takes you under their wing. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of other people who sort of adopt you in that jiu-jitsu family, and they look out for you, and they'll come up to you after practice and they'll roll with you or whatever. They'll give you the free advice. They'll show you stuff. There's a lot of that. That needs to exist. It doesn't have to always come from the head instructor. The head instructor is a lot of times busy. I mean, they're just really busy. But at least, hopefully, that head instructor hopefully knows your name and hopefully makes you feel valued even for the 30 seconds or whatever. And hopefully, they've produced. We say the best leaders, it's not just about what they do. They produce other leaders, right? And hopefully, that instructor has produced other leaders that bring that spirit of other mentors there who say, I care about Noah. I'll look out for Noah.
Right.
There needs to be someone in the academy that's taking on that role that you respect. Might be a higher belt.
Or I work with you. I work with you. Frank Forza. You've got your own platform where you do this, and that's kind of more of a. I mean, that's like a direct path. That's like a direct approach to doing it, to accelerate all the stuff that is underneath the surface. To really, that's the black belt. When I talk about me fixating, I'm not talking about the color of a belt. I'm talking about all of the intangibles that we've been discussing today. How to be a better human, how to be a higher sense, or a higher version of yourself. And when I first stepped on the mat, I am not that person anymore, and I haven't been for a long time. And when you connect the whys with what am I willing to change, what am I willing to move around in my life to become that person? And I don't know what that person looks like yet.
You just said the right word. So Jim Rohn, the philosopher and great motivational speaker, but he said he had a. Let me get out of the sun for a second.
Okay.
He I don't know why I can never remember this Jim Rohn quote, but basically it was when you choose your goals, choose goals that are going to force you to become this exceptional person, right? There's some goal. That's why if you dream small, you're never going to become an exceptional person with non-exceptional goals, right? You got to dream big enough that, okay, to become that, to achieve that goal, in this case, a black belt, you would have to become exponentially better. You would have to become a better human. Doesn't mean you might be the shining example. It just means you're going to become relative to Noah Green 10 years ago, 15 years, 20 years ago. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that, every problem in our life goes away or that every character flaw goes away. But Jim Rohn, I always love that idea, which is pick things like, what are you becoming? What would this goal force you to become? It would force you to grow. You cannot do that black belt and be lazy. And it's kind of like, I always think of that with college degree, right? You and I both have college degrees. And what's the value of a college degree? I'm thinking, like, for me as a writer, I didn't even take a journalism course at Maryland. I failed high school journalism, and I wound up being a journalist and did very well and won my fair share of awards. And so what's the real value of a college degree? The value of a college degree for me was kind of like the confidence. I came from a family that didn't have one, right? That nobody had earned one. So that was sort of a psychological thing. I got to have friends that, were going places. I got to think of myself as I'm going places. And the other thing is, whenever you meet people or clients or whatever, it does give you a little bit of credibility because they assume, if they see college degree, they're assuming at least, well, you can't wake up every day and not go to class, right? You had to at least go to class. You had to at least do some coursework. So it doesn't mean that you're this exceptional human or you're the smartest person in the world, but it means you're not an absolute bum, right? You can't get a college degree and be an absolute bum. Just because you have one doesn't make you a genius. It doesn't make you better than someone, but it does at least prove you can't be an absolute bum and complete the coursework in 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it takes, right? So the same thing with a black belt. If somebody walks in and have a black belt from a legit place, you can make certain assumptions without having to over vet them and go through, you can make certain assumptions. Well, okay, he or she shows up. They at least have some, they're a hard worker compared to most, right? That they're good at showing up, and there's other intangibles that you can just assume. You can't assume that they might always be honest in business or something like that, but you can assume, okay, relative to most people, kind of like Noah, you're a Marine, an ex-Marine, former Marine, or maybe once a Marine, always a Marine. But some people love to hire military because they get that, again, they're getting people that they know, somebody who served for a long time, whatever. They feel more comfortable because of the qualities associated with that. And you don't maybe have to vet that person as much as you might have to vet others. And that's what a black belt, among other things, it's like, okay, I don't like this about Frank, this X, Y, and Z about Frank, but there's got to be something redeemable about him. He's got a college degree and he's got a black belt. He can't be an absolute total loser, right? You got to give some credit. There's got to be something there to work with, right? So it's kind of like that. There's something there, whether you're an employer, whether you're a spouse. You see someone, they've got certain things like this, Marine, Navy SEAL, Jiu-Jitsu black belt, whatever, something that's hard to do. You can at least realize, hey, when this person is motivated, at least, wow, they'll attack life. They'll get after it when they're motivated. Now, sometimes people can wane and they might not be motivated. So they may be a black belt, but not motivated is something they might not be very impressive. But if you show me someone's black belt, I could show you that, listen, if you can at least find the right buttons to push and wave the right carrot in front of them and motivate them, this is probably a person that can produce at a high level. And I would feel comfortable making that assumption.
That yesterday I read something about the people who get into Harvard, or the people who get into these high-power MBA programs, and it's not the program or the college itself that makes them who they are. It's the people themselves. So they've already, either they came out of the womb and through their formative experiences in life, they got that way, or they went through, but there are very few opportunities in life once you're out of your teenage years that will transform you in the way that the jiu-jitsu journey does. You cannot get an MBA and be this transformed. You cannot get a PhD and be this transformed. You'll be transformed in a bookish critical reasoning thought process. And, you know, it takes a long time. Okay. And I could say a few other things. However, you will not have to go through the rate of change below the surface and above the surface like you will with jiu-jitsu. And there's no better way. There's no better way than having a coach, you know, having a direct coach
you need
there with you.
Life, and Noah, this is what happens to people who get our age. You know, you and I are still young guys. We're still hunting, you know, at great adventures. But what happens to a lot of people, right? They hit that midlife crisis, or maybe they think they maxed out or they peaked out, and they stop having big challenges. And this is a good. You need mountains to climb. You need mountains to aim at. And so this is a good mountain, I'd say, for somebody even over 30. I was 30 when I started. That's late in the game. But you need mountains, and this is a really good mountain. You're there, and people need that in their life. People get into their late 30s and their 40s and their 50s, and they just kind of they run hard, but they run in a circle, right? Or maybe they make more money, and then they realize, well, okay, I made more money and I'm making a lot of money, but that just doesn't do it. You need mountains. And just making money is as awesome as that is, as great as that is, as liberating as that can be. But just making a lot of money is not a big enough mountain, like, to change you on all the levels you're describing, like as a person, as a human. Just making a lot of money is generally not going to do that. You need to say, what can I aim at? What mountain? Wake up. What mountain can I climb? And it needs to be a steep one to mean something, right? In order for that transformation, that soul, that change, that deep transformation to happen, it's commensurate with the mountain, the size of the mountain, right? So being a black belt is a pretty good mountain, if for no reason other than, I mean, there's all the things that go into it, you know, with the training and the bonding and the difficulties, but also there is always the threat on any given day of being hurt and going to the hospital. And so,
and you know what? Those people you train with will come see you in the hospital.
Yeah. But
you know, and that's a lot. That's a lot that you carry in your life.
You're going to dance with pain. You're going to dance with pain. You're going to dance with suffering. Yeah. And that's part of the glory of it. That's part of what forces you to go deeper. As they say, the mats don't lie. When they say the mats don't lie, they mean you're not going to be able to lie to yourself. You're going to have to face good, bad, ugly. A lot of people out here are running from deeper parts of their self. And the jiu-jitsu and that grappling is going to uproot it and show us all of the, including me, hey, this is what's wonderful about you, Frank. This is what's good. This is what's kind of Hey, Frank, this is what sucks about you. What you going to do about it? You're going to have to improve that. And a lot of people run from that. They don't want to face that. This sport and combat sports in general, you're not going to be able to BS yourself. You're going to have to look in that mirror. That's when they say the mats don't lie, that's what they mean. It's not just a bragging thing as in who's better than who and the mats don't lie, so-and-so is better. It is a reflection on yourself. And so a lot of people don't stick it out because they just don't like the reflection. And they don't want to put the work in. They don't want to put the work in to improve that image, to improve that reflection. They don't want to put the work in. But if it's ugly. Do, like your thing. So that's why, you know, Jordan and I were being a little bit hard on you when we talked about, hey, don't worry about the black belt. But it's a paradox. On the one hand, you know, you need to be in the present when you're on the mat and when you're training and yada, yada, you know, that sort of thing. On the other hand, it is good that black belt, that there is a vision, that there is an image, that there's an imaginational exercise that happens there where you are thinking about it, because that actually strengthens your why and that keeps you going, right? On the hard days, that idea of knowing when I get that black belt, what that's going to feel like, what that's going to force me to become, how much that's going to force me to grow. So that is the paradox where, you know, there's a time not to think about the black belt. It's like, hey, we're on the mat. Don't worry about the black belt now, brother. You better worry about what's right in front of you and get in the zone and get in the right state of mind and make the right decisions. However, when you're driving in your car or whatever, or, you know, when your body hurts some days, maybe you don't feel like going, remind yourself, no, I'm getting my jiu-jitsu black belt. That's a big deal to me. That's not negotiable. I'm not compromising it. And so that is the paradox where, yeah, it is okay to think that, because at some point, I think for me, it was right around purple belt, mid-purple. I was actually surprised my body was so banged up. And I was like, damn, I'm mid-purple. I might as well keep going to black belt now. I mean, I don't know if my body's going to hold up. My body's been beat up so bad because we were just trying to kill each other and shark tank each other. But right around then, I started thinking, well, I don't know if my body can hold up. But I was like, well, but you're you're already like a mid, or almost a 4-stripe purple almost. I mean, you can't stop now. I mean, you got to keep going, right? And so that's really for me when I really started to think, okay, if you stop now, I mean, gosh, you're so close. You've already put your body through so much, and it'll be an awesome moment. So that's really when it really started to enter my mind. It became more real to me. But if you're already thinking of it and you're thinking of it from the outset, beautiful. If that dangling carrot, if that why is working for you, then beautiful.
But it's all the things that I don't know. It's all those gifts of imperfection that are you're discovering things about yourself, and how you respond to in pain, frustration, in bullies, all kind. There's just so much on the mat that teaches you, and off the mat when you're reflecting upon it, and your relationship with others around you. When you are goal driven, who doesn't like someone who's goal driven? Who doesn't like someone if you're down in the I'm going to just mention this to those of our audience, that this platform that we have, and as we're growing and we're building, it's not going away. It's a platform for someone who's going through a midlife crisis. Maybe they just got a first cancer scare, or they've gone through a heart attack, or a divorce, or they're dealing with great loss. This is a platform that is to help with that journey, to help with working on all those things. And it's a sheer joy for me to share that my journey with you and Jordan each week. And right now, since we have a little more time on our hands, 2 and 3 times a week.
Check it out. No, we got a little pool. We got a little pool action this weekend.
Oh, okay, go for it. Yeah, it's covered though. It looks covered. All right, you gotta take that cover off.
It's about to be uncovered. There you go. Let's see.
Cool. Yeah. All right, get after it. I gotta go spend some family time and keep training this puppy.
I want to say one more thing to people out there. For the 10 or 15 people that we have that watch now, I just want to say this. We got original minds here. We're going to crack this code. We're going to figure this out. We're going to figure out this format, and we're going to be one of the best podcasts out there. So, we need all your support now. I know that we're not the biggest and we're not the best yet. I know that, but we're going to bring it full force. We're going to get better with the production, with the equipment, with the mics, with the formatting, with everything. We're going to crack this code, and this is going to be, you can already see if you bother to listen start to finish to what we've got, you can see we've got a lot of good gems in there. We're coming. We have original content. And this is going to be one of those podcasts worth listening to. I know there's a lot out there. I know there's people doing some good things, but I'm just telling you, we're going to, it's going to take us a while. We're going to build, and we need your support. So if you can share, if you can get the word out, it's going to be, we're going to produce a podcast that's well worth the listen. That's going to educate and enlighten and inspire a lot of people. You can mark my words on that one. So Noah, I know you got to go. Happy 4th. I'll see you on Sunday. We're shooting again on Sunday, 1:30 Pacific Standard Time, 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. We will see everybody. everymanbjj@gmail.com. Noah, have a great rest of the night with the fam.
All right, you too, Frank. Have fun with that pool. Take care.
See you, buddy.
Bye.